a few minutes, we reflect on the inner being. The higher being. Withdrawing our attention from sounds, movements, and actions, and turning to that what is subtle and eternal. We enter the experience of silence and light. And whilst thinking with courage and sincerity about the real nature of things, one realizes that the inner being is from a different dimension, another world. The inner being does not belong to this earth. The real I does not belong to the physical universe. The real I, in a true sense, is a guest in this world, a guest in this body. The guest can temporarily use anything, but doesn't own those things. A guest enjoys the beauty and the newness of it all. Enjoys the variety, but needs nothing. A guest has his home and family and everything at home. A guest is free to come and go. And is amused by every scene that presents itself. There is no question of possessing anything. And as a consequence, in the guest consciousness, there is no fear of losing anything, nor anyone. Such joy, such calm. There is entertainment in being a guest. Nothing is mine, so I can't lose anything ever. No worries, no stress, no need for attachments or dependencies or ego. What a relief! The mind becomes so calm and so serene. Feelings of deep, solid peace emerge. A guest appreciates and respects, delights and plays, shares and cares. A guest stays light and enjoys the visit. Internally free to learn, to appreciate, and to love in a clean way. Without expectations, without getting stuck in attachments. It is a temporary visit to Earth. A guest can leave it all behind in a second. A guest is free.
Good evening, everyone. I'm just waiting for Sister Rona. Thank you for joining us. We are very glad that you make time to join us on Thursday evenings. Sister Rona, that was a beautiful meditation. Thank you. So today's topic is disheartened, take a rest. When I read this topic, right, as the Thursday is approaching, one of the thing what I always do is look what I will be listening on Thursday. What is the topic chosen? And I read the word disheartened, and then there was nothing, and I'm like, that's an incomplete title. And then after some spaces, I read the words take a rest, and I said, aha, this is actually what is needed, right? So in today's COVID time, most of us, either personally, we have experienced this state of mind, or we know someone who has either gone through this or going through this. And whenever we have that feeling of disheartenment, right? One of the things which happens, and I know it is true for me, that the cycle of thoughts, which is like a downward spiral, and mind is stuck in the quagmire of negative thoughts. And you really want to come out of it. Unfortunately, or fortunately, we don't have the tools what we used to use in the pre-COVID times. Whenever we feel disheartened, we could go out with friends, we can plan a vacation, or even go out and hang out for a nightcap. But those options are not there. And that, I think, is a fortunate thing, because that enforces us to learn something which might be a better solution, maybe permanent. Today's speaker is Sister Rona. Most of you are familiar with Sister Rona. You know her very well. You know that her professional background is she's a medical doctor, and Sister Rona has worked in psychiatry. And from 20 plus years, even while she was practicing medicine, she has taken the life of spiritual, living the life on the spiritual path. So I think she offers us the best combination from the medical point of view and the spiritual, through the spiritual lens, how we can actually take a rest. Sister Rona, we are all eager to hear what you're going to share with us, how we can actually put our mind to rest.
Thank you, Anita. Disheartenment. Is this sound okay?
Um, yeah, a bit louder will be, I think, yeah, that should help.
Disheartenment. Many of us must have gone at least at some time through this phase. And maybe this phase is longer in at certain periods. And for certain people, some of us. But let us first try and understand what exactly is disheartenment and how does it come about, so that we can get an insight into what we could do to shift it around. And there are many areas where we can be disheartened. Disheartened, one way to understand it is you're like disappointed and disillusioned. And so you have no motivation, no energy, no enthusiasm anymore for that what you have now or are now disheartened about. No, and it can be in the area of your personal life, in your relationships, that there is a certain disappointment and a certain disheartenment, and then you lose hope and you have no vision for the future anymore. It can be in area of certain personal interests. We may have had certain interests or certain hobbies, or maybe sport. And then at some stage you kind of maybe even get bored, or it did not meet your expectations. Deeper behind there were certain desires and they were not fulfilled, or it did not bring the deeper elation maybe, or deeper satisfaction that you consciously or subconsciously was expecting it to bring. It didn't bring that, and you get disheartened, disillusioned, and maybe even you turn away from that. It can also be at the level of personal effort, in terms of, for example, say maybe you want to make some effort to live healthy here, uh, be involved in certain activities that are good for physical health, maybe a certain exercise or a certain diet, certain habits. And we, after a while, it doesn't bring the desired effect, or it does not, it is costing us more effort than we want to, or there is not enough willpower, and we get disheartened and we get disillusioned and we give up and we think, oh, forget about this, this is not for me. And then we, as if, accept defeat, accept a certain situation that might not be the highest or the best, or maybe even an unhealthy one, but we kind of settle into it and accept it, that that is going to be our destiny, and we accept that maybe something higher is not for me. Disheartenment can be in the area of your professional activities in your career. You may have started your job or your career or your education with certain dreams and certain aspirations, maybe even in the form of a calling and certain hopes. And it turned out different than you dreamt, than you hoped, than you expected, for whatever reason. And then you get into a state of uh, disillusion, disappointed, disheartened. You lose enthusiasm and you lose the energy and you lose the enthusiasm to use your creativity. You lose the enthusiasm to use your skills or to build skills, even. And if we are in an extreme case of disheartenment, we may even completely what uh, lose any form of respect for ourselves and get into a state of low self-esteem. Whilst we might have the potential, we might have the skills, we might have the creativity, but we lack the enthusiasm to in, enhance those skills or polish those skills or use that creativity to apply the self. Uh, disheartenment may be with life in general also. Uh, Maybe the state of our environment and Mother Nature, and the situations with climate and the condition of the world in terms of nature and the environment. We might get disheartened and hopeless, and we might feel, what is this all for? And kind of a dooms, adopt like a dooms perspective, and not using our powers to reflect, our powers to adapt, our powers to see beyond, or our ability to shift our perspective and maybe see a higher, what would be the word, a higher secret, a deeper lesson that life needs is teaching us, a different perspective that make us shift. We can have that sense of disheartenment about maybe politics even. There are people who tell me they don't care about their civic duties. They don't even see it as a duty anymore. But we are part of a society, we are part of a community. So, not that we have to necessarily become an active political advocate, but as part of a society and part of a community, we should give back and at least have a say in how certain things may be planned. No? But we can get disheartened because we see certain things or we do not agree with certain things and we give hope. That hopelessness really doesn't help anyone. Now, can we take a rest from that disheartenment? Can we shift ourselves around? Can we, at least for our own sake, and at least for our peace of mind, drop that disheartenment? And one way to do that is to start at the seed, to start um, in our inner world and to start observing our mental positioning. If there, if I could approach any of these situations that we have discussed, and of course there are more, this, I've only mentioned a few, but if we can uh, position ourselves in such a way that there are no expectations. No? So let us make a rough sketch. So say this is me, no? This is the self. And our life is an interaction with our, between me and the environment, no? Between me and the body, for example, between me and the job, between me and others, between me and nature, between me and society, between me and the community that I live in, between me and my family. There's so our life is an interaction between me, the being, the one who is experiencing everything, and all the things around us. And we generally strive for a certain harmony in these interactions, a certain balance, a certain uh, pleasant experience of harmony. Now, and that harmony usually means I have a certain expectation, a certain need, or a certain desire. And if that need or desire or expectation is met, or at least to some extent, I am okay. I feel hopeful. I feel a certain encouragement. And when that desire is completely met, I feel satisfied. But if there is a mismatch, then I experience stress, I experience a disappointed. I can maybe even feel a certain anger because our expectations, conscious or subconscious, verbalized or not verbalized, those expectations or deeper desires are not met. And what we usually do when we feel like this, stress, one way to define stress is a desire uncertainty complex. So I have a desire and it is not sure if that desire will be fulfilled. I have a certain perceived or real need and I'm not sure if it will be met. Then we get into stress. I have a certain expectation and I'm not sure what will happen. Then we enter into that mode of stress. And if it is not met, we get disappointed, disillusioned, disheartened, losing hope. We may even get angry and irritated, and even violent and manipulative and imposing and enforcing. All kinds of that whole spectrum of negative emotions can emerge, which can get combined with a certain behavior. Now, usually, when that happens, when we get disappointed, say for example, there is a mismatch with the job, there is a mismatch with the boss at the job, and I have been stressed and stressed and stressed, and now I am disillusioned and disappointed and disheartened, and I can't take it anymore. And there was a blowout and angry and fine. So there is a mismatch between the experiencer, the inner being, and that situation, boss, whatever, in the job. Mismatch. And we want a certain harmony. Now, what do we generally do when there is a mismatch? Now, generally, the approach we are almost like conditioned to take is if there is a mismatch with the job, we try to change the job. Mismatch with the boss, we try to change the boss. Mismatch with some community, we move somewhere else. Mismatch with certain hobbies, we look for other hobbies. There mismatch with the body, we try to change the body. Mismatch with the husband or partner, what we do. If it really gets to a big mismatch, we change the partner. This is kind of how we are programmed to deal with these kind of feelings of mismatch. We get disheartened, we get disillusioned, or we get irritated, and we react, and we want to change our environment. But there is another side to this arrow. There is a mismatch between me and the job. So I can change the job, but I can also change this part of the arrow, the other part of the arrow. And I just want you to think about that, no? When there is two sides. So say there is me, the being, and there is whatever the situation, say boss or job. And there are certain situations on this end we can't change. How long will I continue to move if there is a mismatch with the community, or if there is a mismatch with the neighbors? Will I continue to move every time there is a mismatch? If there's a mismatch with the body, how long can I continue to change the body? Try all kinds of things, even surgeries and things to make it match with my desires. Now, another way to approach this mismatch is to change me. Can I change me? Can I change me in such a way that there is no mismatch and not ending up in stress and disheartenment and disillusionment? Now, what is it to change? What could I change? Now, one way to understand is, could could I lower my expectations? Could I lower my preconditioned ideas of how things have to be? And this is why I like this mode, this consciousness of a traveler. You know, a traveler, one aspect of the traveler consciousness is you are open. You're going somewhere. Say if you were in Miami, you come to New York. You don't expect New York to be like Miami. New York will be different in all aspects. But this traveler mindset, you're free. A new experience, a different mode, a different mindset. Miami is nice, New York is nice in its own way. It has its own charm, it has its own dynamic. Now, this traveler mindset makes us open to see every situation as new, every situation as a gift, every situation as an extra new experience. Now, say for example, you are going somewhere, you're going to meet some friends, and they have organized a little gathering of just small families, 6 members, and they made everything spread out and physical distance and masks and everything. And you go there and you have no expectations. You just go there and you're happy to go. You're happy to see them and greet them and meet them. And you're bringing your good, your cheerfulness and your joy just to see and to meet. There is bigger guarantee that you will have a good time. But if you go beforehand with certain expectations that they will have a special chair reserved for you, and that they will have special gifts specially for you, and that they will have special drinks and waiting for you at the entrance to welcome you. And you have these expectations that there will be a certain type of music and only certain people will be there. If you have that expectation, then there is bigger chance you will be disillusioned. You will be disappointed. And if this happens regularly, you will be easily disheartened. Whilst if you go with the open mind, with the feeling of I need nothing, this is like an extra outing. I have everything, I have my home, I have everything. I'm just going to share my joy, my cheerfulness, my whatever, my specialities, my maybe certain skills. Fine, I am going to share. I'm not going to take. I'm not going with whole list of expectations. And there is a bigger chance that I will just remain with that cheerful contentment, that adventurous spirit of something new, something nice, pleasant, but no disheartenment or disillusion or stress. And this is something to reflect on. I mean, what I'm sharing now is a certain understanding, but you will only benefit from it when you start reflecting on this internally. And when you start observing this in yourself, that why do we approach situations and interactions with others with such big expectations all the time? And often when we talk about this topic, we give the example of say, this is Annie, and Annie is a art student. And this is John, and John is an engineering student. Engineering, civil engineering, mechanical engineering student. And they both started to go to university in the same year. And Annie is a little bit expressive in her artisticity, and so she likes, one day she paints her hair red. And John sees that and he is kind of amused, but it doesn't affect his mood. Another day she paints her hair green, and John again kind of amusing, but he is not affected by it. Another day she paints it with blue polka dots. This is another artistic expression of Annie. Just a bit curious and interested and amusing. And another day she is just normal hair. Now, after a year, they get to know each other better, and after 2-3 years, they are married. Now she paints her hair red and blue polka dots. How will be John's state of mind? Most probably, it will not be so enthusiastic anymore. And one day he has to go to dinner for some prospective job, and the future boss and the company have invited him for some official function. And he wants to go with her, and she comes home with yellow and some red stripes. Will he be Mr. Calm? Most probably not. Now, what has happened? One thing that has happened is over time, certain expectations have been generated within John and most probably also within her, but on a different level. But we use many times our interactions and our relationship as a justification for creating certain desires, certain expectations, and maybe even demands. And we are not aware of them. And it is not her behavior that gives him sorrow, but it is his expectation of her that gives him sorrow. And this puts him in jail mentally. This makes Annie his prison officer. She doesn't want to be his prison officer. She has not asked for that. But by creating a desire, an emotional need, a certain expectation, we create our own jails, our own bondages, and we become subservient to the situation or to the other to fulfill those expectations. And when they are not fulfilled, repeatedly not fulfilled, we like to blame. When they repeatedly not fulfilled, we become disheartened and disillusioned, and we might even break the relationship. But we could also shift things around and lower our expectations. When they got to know each other, he had a completely different view and vision of her. And so whatever she was doing, he was kind of cheered by it. Might even felt, oh, this is nice, artistic, this is different. She kind of inspires within me a certain artisticity and adventurous nature and a motivation to do things newly. But over time, other things started to creep in. Now, in life, it will be useful for us to approach our interactions with everything and anything around us with that spirit of curiosity, with that spirit of play, with that spirit of exploration, with that spirit of appreciation and acceptance as extra gifts, and not get into this energy of expectations and demands. That will give us a break from all these complicated and unpleasant feelings. Just be. All these things do not define me. The real self is this inner being, spiritual being, a being of consciousness, a being with its own, with our own nature and qualities and our own specialities and potential. We just need to live from the inside out instead of from outside in. And learn to appreciate our own higher nature and use that in our interactions instead of having lots of expectations and desires from our environment and our external world. On top of that, The world as it is a changing world. Not change is a law in our physical world. Change is a law, and constant change is a law. And on top of that, change is unpredictable. This world doesn't ask your permission to change, it changes. Anything can happen anytime. Now, in such a changing world, in such an unpredictably changing world, is it wise to have expectations and desires? Now, sometimes we use this analogy of the sky. Now, in the sky, there are times when there are clouds, and clouds are beautiful. If you really come and look at it, kind of interesting phenomena, clouds. But the sky changes all the time. You don't expect one cloud to be there all the time. One cloud to stay in that shape that you like all the time. It is changing all the time, and sometimes there are no clouds. And every scene in the sky has its own charm, has its own signal, has its own signals, and has its own beauty. But if I sit down and expect things to be fixed in a certain way, I'm invoking my own misery. I'm invoking my own disillusionment. I'm invoking my own disheartenment. So, something to reflect on, and the journey into spiritual understandings, the journey in reinforcing my spiritual identity, the journey in exploring the beauty of peace that comes from the soul, the beauty that is in experiencing what is beyond this world of change and matter. That in itself is such a powerful foundation and such a basis for a fullness that is changeless. And then to approach this world with that attitude of extra. Now, and to learn to kind of experiment with the dynamics in this world. One way to understand certain spiritual laws is in this world, although we have kind of over time, society has created this habit of expecting and demanding and desiring and needing. And all the systems in our present day culture are aimed at almost like indoctrinizing us by telling us you need to have, you need to get, you have nothing, you have to desire and aspire to get, then you will be something. It leaves us feeling very empty, and it leaves us in bondage, subservient to situations. And it leaves us with an image of ourselves as of empty and nothing. Spiritual perspective is you are a complete and whole being. And in this world, laws, if we start observing certain dynamics and forces in this world, people who are most happy, people who are most content, most fulfilled, are people who give, people who donate, people who cooperate, people who have aims towards which they work by using their skills and giving that to others. People who are most happy have this ability to share selflessly, to use their talents and their virtues and their specialities selflessly for the benefit of others. So one way to frame these dynamics is, in this world, it is not about what we can get from it, but it is what we can give to it. And I would like to close this and then open it up for discussion with, or for questions with an anecdote, which I'm not sure if I have told already before, but this is a poem from Rabindranath Tagore. And Rabindranath Tagore was a poet from India, a philosopher, holy, someone with religious aspirations, but a philosopher mainly, a deep thinker. And he wrote a poem, and the book for which he wrote that poem has won the Nobel Prize for Literature, the first Nobel Prize winner outside of the Western world who won that prize for literature. And the poem is called The Beggar and the King. And it is a story about a beggar who is begging in the village from door to door. And at night, when he comes home, he empties his pockets and he does with whatever he has begged. And one day, he is begging again, and in the distance, he sees a golden light approaching the village. And he gets an auspicious feeling. And then that light comes into the village and enters the street where this beggar is in. And he sees that this is a golden carriage. And on this golden carriage is the King of Kings sitting, God himself. And so his heart starts beating and he thinks, my days of poverty are over. God himself. And to his excitement, the carriage stops in front of him. And the King of Kings comes out and smiles at him. And then stretches out his hand and says to this beggar, what have you to offer to me? And so this poor beggar says, what is this? Doesn't he know that I'm a beggar? God, he's supposed to give me. But you can't refuse God. So he goes into his pocket and he looks for the smallest piece of grain that he can find, and he takes it out of the pocket and gives it to the King of Kings, who says, thank you, smiles, turns around, gets on the carriage and takes off, leaving this poor beggar bit disillusioned behind. So what can he do? He continues begging. And at the end of the day, he comes home, he empties his pockets on the kitchen table. And what does he find? Amongst all the pieces of bread and some rice and different things, he finds a small piece of gold, pure gold, just as small as the piece of grain that he gave to the King of Kings. And the last phrase in the poem is, I wished and I wept that I had had the heart to give him my all. And I like this poem very much because it gives an insight in certain dynamics. He was excited, God was coming, but he filled his mind with expectations. And because of those expectations, he was disillusioned. But another lesson is, He gave this small piece of gold, grain, and he got back a small piece of gold. Law in this world, law of God, is how big is your heart, how much you can give, instead of how much can I demand and expect. And what I get when I expect is big chance that sooner or later I get disheartened. Whilst if I lower my expectations, move in this traveler consciousness, become firm in the awareness of the true self and my invisible treasures, immortal being of light, spiritual being, get into that fullness and see life as an extra experience. At least we could approach everyday situations with much less expectations, much less desires. And many of our expectations and desires and needs are fabricated in our own mind. We have somehow created the conditioned idea that we need. I need this shoe, I need that. Much of the, how many feet you have? One pair of shoes, two pairs of shoes is enough. Everything else is even not even required. No. We have created this habit of more, 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 want, desire, 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 expect. It is unhealthy. And it leaves us disillusioned very easily. Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments?
Sister Rona, I have posted a message that if anyone has a question, if they raise their hand, we'll unmute them. So please, if you have any questions,
They can unmute themselves. No, you can unmute
uh,
yourself.
if I do that, you will be muted for a second. Yeah.
Some function in your soul where you
Yes. Yeah. If I unmute all of them, I can do that, but you will be muted for some time. You have to unmute yourself. So, uh,
raise your hand and Anita can unmute you. I'm not seeing any hands.
yes, I'm not seeing any hands either.
Okay. If there are no comments, no questions, then let us have 2 minutes of meditation. And I would like to encourage you to just observe your own mind and at least avoid these fabricated and useless expectations. If we bring those expectations down, there will be much more space already for calm. So let us keep the body comfortable. Let the breathing become regular. Allow the heartbeat to slow down and just acknowledge how beautiful and how special even the body is. And it is just there every day and it serves you, the soul. And allow that feeling of gratitude, even towards this body. Every day it gets up, it functions. You can see and talk and hear and use it and make it move around. Even though there might be some joint pains or muscle pains or whatever, certain limitations, but it functions every day. It serves you, the soul. To every situation, there is a spiritual angle, a spiritual perspective, a positive way of approaching it. Use your wisdom to choose the wisest and the most positive approach. You will feel better inside, and you will not get trapped in disillusionment or disheartenment. You will stay calm. The moment we get into expectations, we invite problems for ourselves. Let us experiment with a mind free from expectations, a mind that gives the best of itself freely. Self-respect will rise, a deeper calm and contentment and peace. And as we continue the journey, aim to hold this in your awareness always. Thank you and good night. And hope to see you again next week or in some of our courses or other activities. Good night.